let's see. Where should we start? Should we go over the new additions to Wiki? And so I'm sure that everyone knows where to find the information. Maybe that's good. And then transition over to talking about the base setup sheet. And if you have any questions, you can ask. Okay. How about that?
Yep. Oh, boom, boom.
Neo, think about the last question.
No,
Yeah,
I'm back
also,
to work now.
You have to think about the last question. Let's see. Do you think we can do this in 1 hour instead of 3? That'd be nice.
You should have all the data from today. Maybe you wrote everything. I seen it.
You've seen it?
Just a bit.
Okay, so I have to share my browser so I can show you this. Here we go. Let's go. So this is a valuable section. Community and Wiki. Now we have some new stuff over here. All the old stuff, interactive setup sheet will be updated here in the next weeks. It's a really good place to go if you haven't, because you can click on different parts of the sheet and there's a page explaining what this setup change does. And we are going to update this with the new sheet because we have new options. And also I want to improve the advice a bit and make it a better guide for you, so you really know what you should be running. Then another really good section that we are working on now is here under Mayako cars. You have the MX8, MX8E, MX8T, which is coming, by the way. Remind me at the end of this, we'll talk about it. And then here, kit build advice. So in this section, we are gathering all the information related to each step of the build. So if we go into the Nitro buggy, for example, it's laid out here, front shocks. We have a build video by Pekko. I haven't watched it, so please watch and give feedback. I have no idea what he did or if he built it right. So I'm hoping he did it well. When he built the cars for Cavalieri, they fell apart. So keep that in mind. Ronnefalk build, he is actually verified good mechanic. So we included that here also. Pictures, build advice in text form. So Kevin isn't here now, but Kevin would stop scrolling at this point. He only watches videos and looks at pictures, no reading. But for those of you who read, it's really good. Short advice about the build, most important things, known issues. If there are issues related to this bag, we list them here. Then the option parts we run related to this bag, and then a bit of a guide. So this is the shocks. So different pistons we run, what's the starting oil, shock oil conversion, basic setup advice, part numbers. If Invisible Speed has a relevant video, it's going to be here also. Also for this page, something we'll add is I'm going to build a couple of cars here in the next weeks. And for each bag, I'll film a really short 1-minute video going over the most important things. Just so if those of you with a short attention span, you don't want to watch a longer video, at least you could try and watch a 1-minute video where we go over the most important things. So this is what we are working on now. So all the bags will eventually be here. See, this is a Baumann issue. I click forward and it goes to e-buggy. Why is that Baumann? I don't know. This is the e-buggy, but we don't want the e-buggy. We want the Nitro. There are some wrong links here. Eventually, all the bags are going to be here. So same format always. Videos. The video is here, but it's not allowed to embed elsewhere. So if you can watch it on YouTube, it's the Ronnefalk build. And same idea. So yes. work in progress, but this is going to be a really valuable resource. And manual we'll talk about in a moment. Okay. Anytime you have any comments or suggestions or anything at all, or just verbal abuse, then just say something, okay? Or be very polite and raise your hand. There's an option for that too. What else? We have new setup sheets. We have a new blank setup sheet for Nitro and debuggy, and then new base stock setups also. One for low to medium grip, another for high grip. And we have one new team setup, which is the My DNC setup. Car is very good, very loose, bumpy track. So it's a good one to have here. Let me try and rewind my brain about 9 hours. What did we talk about?
The downloads.
Buffering. Okay, diffs. I know where to start now. The base setups are very good, okay? Seriously, they are very good. So it is a very good place to start. But some things you cannot really predict, or how can I say, you can't make it right for everyone in every condition on a base setup like this. You just cannot. So you have to think for yourself. Track condition, skill level. Where do you start? Diffs, this is one of those things. A rule of thumb that I can give you is that when you think about diffs, if you have a problem with the handling of the car, something that's an issue, if it's happening on power, so you get on power, the rear is loose, the rear steps out, the car is hard to drive on power, then you can go thinner in the diffs. If you have an issue off power, so on power you're fine, but your car is hard to control off power into corners or mid corner, you lose the rear end suddenly, for example. But on power it's fine. Then you could consider going to thicker oils. So an issue with handling on power, go to thinner oils. An issue with handling off power, go to thicker oils. That's a good rule to keep in mind. Then another rule, which is, let's call this the Pekko rule. We need names for everything. This is the Pekko constant, right? The Pekko constant is same diff oil front and rear, thicker in the center. We've tried this now everywhere. Literally everywhere. We've been to the moon and Mars and the middle level of the Eiffel Tower in Paris. And we've tried this and it works. So we are now confident in saying that this style of diff setup is really good. Pekko, are you here?
Yep, I'm here.
Before I go on, since this is now the new Pekko rule or Pekko constant, he will explain how we came to this and why this is good and why you should do it.
Then
So
I have a question.
What?
After I have a question.
After, okay. You're just pre-asking, or pre-informing.
So this basically came up with idea from 10 scale 4WD, where we usually run just same diffs front and rear. And I was curious to try it in 8 scale. And then I had the time to try it properly. And for me, it feels like the car is just more balanced throughout the corners and just basically everywhere. For example, when you go thicker front diff, you can feel that, okay, the car is pushing more into the corner. Then on drive, you have more steering. And then when you go thicker in the rear, the car can fishtail up out of the corners. And so basically this, when you can go thicker front and rear, and it makes the car just easier and has more drive. It doesn't do this fishtailing or pushing into the corner. It just balance out the car and makes it more like a consistent to drive around the track.
Before your question, Neo, let me add to that. I agree with what Pekko said. Plus, I would recommend that when you change your diff oils, I know it's more work, right? But keep this same idea and go, if 10, 15, 10 is pretty much the thinnest we would ever go, right? Maybe you could do like 8, 10, 8 or 8, 12, 8. But 10, 15, 10, it may look like a lot here, but on the Mayako, really, it is not. So don't be afraid to run thicker diff oils. The kind of setups we run is the center is 50% more than front or rear, like here now, 10, 15, 10, or it's double, 10, 20, 10. That's something for you to try and play with. And also then, when you go thicker, you could go, for example, 15, 20, 15, or 15, 30, 15, or 20, 30, 20, or 20, 40, 20, right? On the high grip setup, the base is 30, 50, 30, right? So don't be afraid to run really thick diff oils. At the Worlds, we had 300, 500, 300, or 200, 500, 200, something crazy like that on Radovan. So 10, 15, 10 is nothing, right? This is something that's different from other cars, but well worth you trying, and I am pretty sure that you'll realize that this Pekko rule is very good. Neo, you have a question.
The question is, I'm pretty sure you have tried this one, but you have tried this one with this setup. So for example, 3-degree rear toe. That's because when I tried it, it was like the car, I have pretty much more aggressive setup than this, a lot more aggressive.
Yeah, Neo, you are getting ahead of yourself. Let's not talk about towing. It doesn't exist right now, okay?
Doesn't exist?
No, there's no towing right now. Let's go step by step.
Okay.
But let's talk about it here, because I almost know what you are referring to. Okay, so base setup, you start with that, but you have to think for yourself, what is the track like? What is your skill level? The higher the grip, the higher the speed, if it's a treated track in a hot climate, you know, all these things affect your diff choice. Very bumpy, loose track, thinner. Smooth, high-speed track, even if it's loose, you can go thicker. The higher the grip, thicker. So you have to think about this yourself and figure out what is the base starting point for you. Then, apart from the diffs, shocks is the next thing, which we can't really put one stock setting and it's going to be amazing always, because it depends on the track, the surface, grip level conditions, and also it depends on you, your skill level and preference. So we try to list a few different options. And the main thing you need to remember is fewer holes, bigger holes. So 5, 1.5, maybe some combination of 1.6 in the rear. This will make the car the most calm and stable. So the responsiveness is lower. The car will be mostly easier to drive for you. And when you feel the suspension on the pit table, you should really feel the oil. So it should feel thick and slow when you move the suspension. That's one end of the spectrum. And I would say that for the majority of the tracks that we run on, it's a safe starting point. Then, if you go to the other end of the spectrum, to 8-hole pistons, for example, then it's more holes and smaller holes. Pistons with more smaller holes, you run an oil which feels a bit thinner. So on the pit table, it won't feel as thick and heavy and slow. And on the track, the car will feel more responsive. It will feel stiffer, firmer, flatter when you drive it on the track. So let's say you are on a track that is medium grip, pretty fast, and your car just feels soft always. It rolls a lot and it's not really precise, and you have trouble driving in the high-speed sections of the track. It could seem, and this isn't really even, this is not dependent on traction level really. Even on a low traction track, this can be the case. If you have this feeling that the car seems slow and not in lap time wise, but slow in response and sluggish and soft, and you don't have a good connection to the car, it could be because you are running a 5-hole piston, for example. And that's when you would switch to a 6 or a 7 or an 8 to get the car to be more responsive, give the car more initial grip. Then on the other hand, if you are on a track and your car feels very nervous and edgy and aggressive, that's a sign. Also maybe a very bumpy track and it's not so good in the bumps. That's a sign for you to consider maybe if you're running, let's say, an 8-hole piston, maybe go to a 6 or a 5-hole piston, because that's going to calm the car down. It's not as aggressive. It will be less aggressive in the bumps also, and it would handle the bumps better. Apart from this, we also have different pistons. So the Mayako piston is a big piston. The outside diameter is big. Associated, HB, Kyosho, TRC, brand that makes some different pistons, they are smaller in diameter. So that's another way to tune the car. It's not the same as running few big holes, but it's in the same direction, right? A smaller piston will, again, make the car feel more calm and plush and soft. A bigger piston, more stiff, firm, flat. So it's something to consider also. And then lastly, we have those pistons with angled hole. For example, the Ultimate or the Kyosho, they have pistons where the holes are angled. And those are very good on especially the European and Asian tracks, which are very smooth. They have a lot of jumps and off-camber sections and all kinds of different features, but the surface is smooth and oiled or glued or something like that. On those kind of tracks, these pistons with the angled holes are very good because you can run a setting, let's say like 7 or 8 holes. The oil doesn't need to feel very thick, so it handles the off-camber sections and all different sections of the track well, but it's not too soft. When you land, or if there are any bumps or whoops or something, you still have good pack. So it's this kind of good compromise to have a soft feeling car and a responsive car, but then you have pack. So these are, I think, the main things to think about when you consider your pistons. And one other thing, it came up in the first meeting. Someone was asking about MIP pistons, VRP, all these different pistons with shims or flaps or this or that. I would say that, and also this new one now, position sensitive, there is room to improve the current shocks, but all of the ones that are on the market now, I don't think that you will be able to improve on these normal pistons consistently. So you don't need them. And I would recommend, if your goal is just to do the best you can, run normal pistons. The only exception is to something special is those springs that go under the piston on the shock shaft. So on smooth tracks, especially on smooth higher grip tracks, we have that internal spring that goes on the shock shaft, inside the shock body under the piston. It doesn't stop the shock from extending to full droop, but it slows that last bit down. And that helps to keep the car a lot more flat. So that's a really good tuning option that we use. But I think, honestly, to keep things simple, you can remember this. These are basically the pistons. We have different sizes, diameter. Then we have pistons with angled holes, and then we have those springs under the piston. Always run emulsion is the easiest, and you'll be good to go. That's my opinion. Those the MIPs and VRPs and all of those, if you enjoy tinkering and setting up your car and testing, and that's why you have this hobby, then by all means go and test and perfect your car on your home track. But then when you go to a different track, you might find that you are way off and you have to do it again. So if your main goal is improving your racing and race success, I don't recommend that route. But if testing is why you are doing this, then by all means, go ahead. Okay, diffs and shocks. What's next? Those two are the ones that are most important to not just blindly follow a setup sheet, but understand to run what you need to run for your track, for your conditions and your skill level. And this is also where I think the mentors in the youth mentoring program come in, because the mentors should have this knowledge, the local knowledge, to help anyone with a Mayako car make the right choice when it comes to diff oil or piston and shock oil. Okay, those are really the two things that you have to have some local personal knowledge to get right. Then all of the rest we can deal with here on the sheet easier. How should we do this? Maybe we eliminate some of the options first. So the goal right now for us is we have the wiki, so we can check each bag separately, make sure that we build the car correctly, make sure everything is perfect, free, everything that's free is free, all the right screws in the right places, everything on the car is as it should. Then we want a good base setup to go to the track, and we want to practice our driving. So if you go in the course material, I linked the videos that I recommend you watch, all about driving. Then we want to be able to do consistent 5-minute runs. And until we can do multiple 5-minute runs consistently in a row, same 5-minute time, same kind of lap times, changing the setup isn't really relevant. You can run this base setup and it's good enough. It gets the job done. Then once you can do consistent runs, then it makes sense to make a few changes and start learning what the changes do. We'll talk about that in the next meeting with the homework, but I want to go over each of these now, but only focus on the sort of more important ones and the ones that you can see that we are changing from track to track. So if we just eliminate some of them first. If you run your front shock in the middle on the tower, middle on the arm, front link, middle on the tower, top outside on the hub, you can always do that. Like it's fine. Front arm position, front, middle, rear. If you have it in the middle, it's fine, always. Knuckle position, middle, fine, always. You don't need to change those really ever, right? You could just keep them there. One thing that is very good though is to remember that if you go to a higher grip track, if the track is fast, if you feel that there is a risk of the car flipping over, or you feel that the car is initially nervous, you could move the link up on the tower. This is the only really sort of very good change that you need to keep in mind now. The other things I said, they're fine as they are. Arm stiffness, the basic, like the black kit comes with softer arms, which are a bit shorter, and then the MPC and limited edition has the harder arms, which are a bit longer. That's the difference here. Honestly, I haven't tested back-to-back for any performance difference. We just run the MPC or limited edition arm. We always run the plastic cover on the arm. For the drive shaft, we have a few different options. You can run the CVD and it's no problem. And I would say if you can't do consistent 5-minute runs, you don't need to worry about the CVD in the front. We run the universal now pretty much always because it gives more steering. And we need steering to go as fast as we can. But the CVD is fine, so don't worry about it. Then this is something that you should worry about. So I did say diffs, you have to adjust it to your skill level and track. Same with shocks. This is another thing. And I would explain it like this. KPI 1 is the smoothest initial steering that you can have. So it's the most calm and least aggressive front end. But you can have an issue mid to exit of the corner, where mid corner the car wants to turn more. Maybe it causes the rear to feel loose. On exit, you can have the problem where you feel that the rear wants to fishtail and you aren't as confident getting on power. So KPI 1 is easy in, can be an issue mid and out. Then KPI 0.5, this setting adds a bit of initial steering. So into the corner, especially higher speeds or higher grip, the car can be a bit more nervous, but then mid corner to exit is easier. So then mid corner, you have a safer feeling, and getting on power, exiting, you feel like you have more rear grip and the car is easy to drive. So this is a compromise, really. And I would say that it's similar to the diffs and shocks. You can't have one setting and then have everyone in every condition situation be happy. You have to try this for yourself. And it's not really relevant. The Casta isn't really relevant, that the feeling comes from the KPI. So maybe Pekko can explain his feelings and what he chose and why. Because last year we spent the year basically going between these two, and now he just sticks with one always.
Yeah, so now I've been running almost everywhere KPI 0.5 and Caster 2. That has been, for me, the way to go. It just gives the nice steering feeling into the corner, and you have really this nice response with the steering. And from like middle of the corner and out of the corner, the car is easier, and the Caster gives a bit more steering in that area, but into the corner, the Caster is a bit more smoother. So also that makes the steering feeling more linear. But yeah, the response from the KPI 0.5, it's much better for me, and I like the feeling with the steering, because with the KPI 1, it doesn't have this feeling into the corner, but out of the corner, the car can just suddenly overturn or something like that. So I have this nice precise feeling with the KPI 0.5 into the corner, and then out of the corner, it's much easier, and I can punch it out of the corner.
Yeah, I feel the same, and now I've really been running KPI 0.5 and Caster 2 most of the time. So the Philippine Masters will be the real test. If I prefer KPI 0.5 and Caster 2 on that track over KPI 1 and Caster 1 or 2, then I know that I'll always prefer it. Because Philippine Masters track is high grip and fast, and that is kind of where you would assume that if someone likes KPI 1, then that's where they will like it. And it has good grip, so rear traction isn't a problem out of corners. So KPI is something you need to figure out for yourself, which one you prefer. Then for steering, let's keep it simple. You always run the link forward on the Ackerman plate, except if you're on a really high grip track and you're struggling with the the car in corners, like it has too much steering. Then you would move it back. The reason is you have initial turning into the corner, but then the car pushes. So it actually feels easier to drive on high grip with the link back. But most of the time, forward. And then, so this you don't really need to change much. But on the outside, this is a very good tuning aid actually, because the long plate and link hole in, so longest plate and shortest link, that's the smoothest steering you can have. And then if you start moving the link out, lengthening the steering link, you will make the car more responsive and have more steering in tight corners. So it's a very good way of adjusting the amount of steering. Smoothest steering, long plate, short link, more aggressive steering the further out you move that. Bump steer, 0-0 shims on the Ackerman ball up, on the knuckleball down. It's a good sort of base to really measure Ackerman. You need a setup station, but you can visually check it also. The way I do it, you turn the wheel, you look at the outside wheel, then you work the suspension, and you see when you compress what happens. Does it stay about the same angle? Does it open up, bump out, or does it bump in? That's what you adjust here. So to start with, if you just have this, you're fine, you're good to go. You don't have to worry about it. But later on, if you want to start tuning the car, it's a very powerful tuning option. Then A and B block, you can run 0-0 always everywhere, and it's going to be okay. This is something like if you are learning to drive and practice focusing on that, you don't need to worry about this. It's good. You can run no shim everywhere, always. It's fine. If we go to the rear, I would say, contrary to the front where I said shock in the middle and middle, always good. Don't worry about it. You don't need to really change it. It's fine. The rear actually is so powerful that it is worth to think about a bit. I would say middle and the arm, you can always do that. Always run that. Not a worry. But the shock on the tower, middle of the 3-hole tower, so second from the inside, is a good starting point, especially on lower grip. But if you're on a high grip track, and if your car feels soft, if you have issues exiting the corner when you get on power, then standing the rear shock up is a very good setting, very good thing to adjust on the car, because it makes the car more stable out of corners. That's why this is actually the standard setting on the high grip setup. So yeah, so the rear shock position on the tower is a really good adjustment to have. The lower you go here, the more rotation you have in corners, and the more the car turns out of corners, and the more up you go, the more stable feeling you have. You lose some steering in tight corners, and when you get on power, the car feels more stable. So it's a compromise, but it's a really good setting, powerful setting. For the link, I would say middle on the tower, always good. Top long on the hub, always good. Same as front, high grip track, fast track, you could lift the link up on the tower. Maybe bumpy track also, you can try it. It is smoother over the bumps. Now we come to the first option part that I think is really worth having. Let's say it doesn't, once again, it's not so relevant if you are still at the stage where you're trying to do clean 5-minute runs. But if you can do consistent 5-minute runs, if you are at the point where you are learning about setup already, if you are, spending money going to races, traveling to races, then it is worth spending the money on either the optional rear hub, the normal CNC one, or the 3-piece one. And 2 main reasons for that. Well, 3 really, but the most important, I think, is you can change the axle height. So the axle's distance to the outer hinge pin is the shortest on the plastic hub. So it's there or there, low axle height. And what we tend to run actually is the middle one. If we have a CNC hub, we tend to run the middle height, and always pretty much. So this is one reason I would get the CNC hub. And then the second is we can add toe in. We can add outboard toe in. You can have 0, which is same as plastic, or you can add 0.5 degree or 1 degree. And adding toe in on the rear hub is very powerful, and you gain rear traction without losing steering. So it's a very good way to add rear grip. We pretty much always run the link top row outside, and the length shims are 0 to 2 mil, and height, I would say 1 to 3 really, but almost always 2, it seems lately. The 3-piece hub has the added benefit of being able to adjust offset, so the length of the arm on the outside, and then you match it with the offset insert in the hub. So long arm is low offset, middle arm you would also switch to middle offset. The more offset you have, the more aggressive the car will be, the more initial grip you have. So going in, good traction, mid corner, rear loses traction, get on power, you have traction again. So long and low offset is the most stable and easy position. This is kind of the starting point. And then this is something I also recommended for the boys in New Zealand right now for ABC. Start with this, and then that track has a lot of hairpins, it seems, and it's quite tight. If you are lacking steering and you're waiting for the car, okay, then you can go middle, and you'll have more rotation. So plastic hub is fine, but if you are serious about making the most of your racing and you are learning about setup, then yes, I would get the CNC or 3-piece. Then let's talk about the rear axle, CVD or universal. Same thing again. The car comes with CVD front and rear. The car is capable. You can win races. You can do well. You can have a really good handling car like this. But these are preferences, really. And they make a significant difference. So if you are driving consistently, you are changing your setup, you want to improve, this is something worth trying to understand which style you like. Do you like the CVD or the universal? The biggest jump is from a CVD to the 91 universal with a 8x16 bearing. This is the most aggressive setting, the stiffest rear end, most initial grip. The 94 is between these two. I would say that most people would probably prefer the 94 universal, and the better driver you are, the more you would prefer the 91. But it's not directly like that, because, for example, David Ronnefalk, he really liked the 94 and pretty much always ran it. And then someone like Robert, it was impossible. He had to run the 91. And Pekko also, because they are animals out there on the track, always on the throttle. So this is, again, something that is a very good option to have, and you will probably pick one and stick with it always. Okay, then diff shim first and then CND plates. The no shim is no shim front, no shim rear. So lowest diff height gives or makes for the most plush and soft car. If the track is bumpy, difficult, low grip, then that's going to be the easiest car to drive. As soon as you start going towards more smooth, fast tracks, not even only dependent on traction level, just the fact that they are smooth and fast, then you start benefiting from raising the rear diff. And just 1 mil, you change the insert in the tower C&D block when you add the insert, just so, or add the shim, just so everything stays at the same height. The only thing you're changing is the diff height, the gearbox height. It's a very good tuning option, this. So on smoother tracks, faster tracks, higher grip tracks, try going to 1 mil shim on the rear. And now we also have those carbon shims, which are even better than the plastic one in those conditions. Okay. Then C&D plate. This I was sort of questioning what to put here, like 3 degrees or something like a mix, like I ran at DNC, 50, 54.5, or just even 1.5. Because we actually very rarely run 3 degrees. So maybe this is something where all of you can also provide your feedback for what you think, but 3 is kind of standard, safe bet, but the Mayako car has so much rear traction already that often going to less can feel even better because it's less stuck, catches things less, floats are over the track easier, bumps, all that stuff. So I'm not 100% convinced of the toe setting, but this I am convinced of. We have 2 different options here. Sort of these 3 on the left are narrow C&D blocks, and then 54, 57 is wide. The narrow block is always going to be the sort of the one with more traction, or let's say the one that has a more safe feeling and higher level of traction and easier in the bumps. And that means on loose, especially loose bumpy tracks, the narrow options are most likely going to be easier to drive than the wide. The wide, the benefit of it, why would you ever run the wide C&D block, is because it's faster, more corner speed, firmer feel of the rear, on especially on smoother, faster, higher grip tracks. Lately, we've run this now everywhere except DNC. DNC, we went to the narrow C&D block. So let's just go over how you should run this. If you are running narrow C&D block and you try the wide one, what do you do? Well, I recommend you do the following. Wide C&D block, then long out drive, and then you run the long arm low offset. So which is the same as the plastic hub, stock arm, or same as stock arm and the other CNC hub. So wide blocks, long out drive, and then long arm. That's going to be the most stable setting. When you run the plastic or this CNC hub, you run a 4 mil or 5 mil hex. I think you have to run the 4 mil hex. It will be too tight in the box otherwise, if you have rules where you race. And then when you run the 3-piece, it's narrower. You can get away with running the 5 mil hex also, 4 or 5 mil hex. This is the most stable setting with the wide C&D block. And we've run this a lot now lately, so it's been very good. And for the drive shaft, you can run the same as you normally run. If you run the 91, keep running it, or 94, keep running that, because that's why you are lengthening the out drive. You move the arm out on the inside, you keep it the same on the outside, you go narrow hex, you go long out drive. Capiche? Yes?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Then another, so just to recap, the narrow setting, very good. It will always be good everywhere. Wide, it can suck. Okay? Just remember that. Narrow will always be good. Wide can suck. If you're at DNC with a wide C&D blocks, you might be struggling. Even we went to the narrow there. So rule of thumb, narrow, easy. Good in bumps, good on low traction, easier. Wide, faster. Okay? Then anti-squat or arm height. This is really good also. Good starting point, 0, 0. But let's say the track is difficult, bumpy, loose, mid-corner. You are not comfortable with the rear end. Maybe it wants to slide a bit or catch bumps. It's just not comfortable. Only doing this, 0.5 down, 0.5 down. Just half a mil, you would think. That doesn't do anything. That doesn't matter. Big deal on this car. You go from 0, 0 to 0.5 down, 0.5 down. The rear end is softer. You have more overall grip. You have more grip in corners. Noticeable. Okay? Trust me.
This is a very powerful thing.
Yes. Even Neo knows.
Yeah.
Okay? So, pay attention here. This is a very important and good setup option. I think that's what I ran at DNC, 0.5 down, 0.5 down. Okay, let's look at these. We have a note here, setup station. If it's red, a setup station was used. Why is that relevant? Because when you measure your camber on a setup station, it shows more than when you measure with a camber gauge. The reason is the tires stick to the surface, so it doesn't allow the tire to go into full camber, eliminating all the play, all the slop you have in the axles and plastic parts. Normally, this is about 1.5 degrees, 1.5 to 2 degrees, let's say, which means that if you have a setup station and you measure 2.5 camber on the front with tires on and a camber gauge, that would be 1 degree or maybe 0.5. That's why this is relevant. So just having the number isn't enough. You need to know if this was measured with a setup station or not. And the reason I made the setup station is because now the cars are getting so good and also the tracks are more groomed and these things really begin to matter now. So just adjusting, you know, 0.5 degree of camber and of toe and bump steer and all of that you check with the setup station, really knowing where it is, it makes a noticeable difference. And that's where we are heading very fast. So I really recommend that if you enjoy your racing, you want to make the most of your racing, you need to start learning to understand the small differences between camber, toe, bump steer. And to do that, you have to have a setup station. Droop, we use droop blocks. The range on the front is 0 to +5. On the rear, 0 to -6, 7. This is a very good starting point, I think. +2, -4. The smoother the track, the less rear droop you would run for first. Maybe +2, -2. It's also a very good setting. Maybe you start decreasing the front droop to +4, maybe. The less droop you run, the more flat, responsive, more corner speed you have. But then at some point, the car won't jump and land as well. You will start losing traction mid-corner. It will be more edgy to drive. So more droop is smoother, less droop is flatter and faster. But on smooth, high-grip tracks, less droop is actually easier to drive. So this is a very powerful tuning option also. And if you are somewhere in this range of +2, -4, for example, it's not going to be a problem at least. Your car's going to be good and easy. But this is something that people often overlook, and their droop is all over the place. And just this is one of the, you know, when I say that are there any kids here? I don't care. When I say that I unfuck someone's car, this is one of those things. Okay? I just check droop, and it's way off, and I fix it, and people are amazed. So it is powerful. Roll bars, front, we run 2.1 to 2.3. Rear, 2.4 to 2.6. We have different bars, but that's kind of what only thing we run. The looser the track, the thinner the roll bar, maybe a 2.1. Then as the grip goes up, we start going 2.2, maybe 2.3, but we don't really go further than that because a harder front roll bar makes the car more aggressive. Rear, loose and bumpy like DNC, 2.4. Smoother track, but like DNC, 2.5. Higher grip, 2.6. Don't really go more than that. And then when you start going to an even higher grip track, so a track where carpet or glued track and the tire can't slide anymore, so it's like Velcro, then what happens is you actually start going thinner on roll bars again. And the reason is you think of a bell curve almost. Low grip, thin bar. As the grip goes up, thicker bar. Then super high grip, you go back down to a thinner bar. So yeah, keep that in mind. Then option parts. I said this base setup, you figure out your diffs, you figure out your shocks and your KPI. Okay, that's on you. You need to know what you prefer. Everything else you can run as it is on the sheet and you'll be good. I recommended the CNC rear hub because it adds adjustability and performance. Other things that are worth considering. Long chassis. It can be more stable, but it's a preference thing. Both work, stock and long. Wing, definitely the wing of David is more stable than the kit wing. So a good purchase for your next wing. Then rear arm carbon braces, we always run them because we found that they are more consistent and the car just works better. Front, I mentioned we run the 99 front universal because it's more steering. And then rear, we run either the 94 or the 91 rear universal. So CNC hub, I said. And then usually if we run narrow blocks, it's 50, 53, and then wide 54, 57. We already covered that. And KPI 0.5, usually we run caster 2 and KPI 1, both caster 1 and caster 2. Yeah. And now also the floating steering servo mount. And actually, I'm going to show that to you next. But do you have any questions or comments or anything about this?
I have one, Joseph.
Okay.
When do you know to do like engine forward or backwards, or is that kind of just like a feel thing as well?
That's a very good question. I actually forgot that in the morning meeting. It's only 2 mil, but it's a big deal. Let me see. I want to give you a rule of thumb.
I guess I kind of tested them, and whenever I was doing long, it almost made the rear end feel like really heavy, like kind of pendulumly, kind of.
Yeah.
So I kind of liked the short a little bit better.
You mean forward and back?
This is forward. Sorry, yeah, my bad. Yep, my bad.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I would say that forward makes the car more aggressive. So you have more steering in hairpins, you have more off-power steering. That's the kind of feeling you have driving around the track. The car feels more light, more nimble. Then when you move it back, the car feels more heavy, calm, often feels like you have more rear grip. The rear can be a bit stuck even in corners. For jumping, most of the time, forward is better, but we've had some weird moments where actually backward was better. But this is the kind of thing where if you change this, you kind of have to rework your setup. It's really a thing where you have a setup and then you change this. Oh, now it's so much better. No, you almost always have to adjust something else after you change this. So drivers tend to stick to one. They select one and then they rework their setup around that. But for me personally, for example, I can say that I run the engine back almost always. But then if I'm at a track like the Portugal Euros, which was very high grip, 10 scale style, off camber sections and these corner tabletops and these difficult sections where you have to be very precise. And because of the high grip, you need the car to be stiff, but you can't go too hard on roll bars and make it very stiff because then it will flip over and be hard to drive. So it's this difficult situation. I actually run the engine forward. And the reason is you have less weight on the rear, so less chance of that car collapsing on the rear or something strange happening mid to exit of corner, which is the most difficult on those kind of tracks, in my opinion. Going in, you can sort of drive slowly or calmly with the engine in front. You have good, precise steering in, and then out, it's easier. But the better drivers, let's say, Ronne, Falken, even Robert, I think Pekko too, they prefer the engine back because they manipulate the weight of the car more. They drive the car more. It's harder to do, but you can be faster because you can manipulate the car better with the engine in the back, I would say. This pendulum thing you even mentioned, like you could feel that. That is what higher skilled drivers want, that feeling that they can really sort of place the car better. But for me, yeah, that's too hard. So just an interesting note. So mostly I run it back, but then on that kind of track, super high grip, very technical, difficult, I would run it forward so that I can turn a fast lap time by driving slower in a sense, more calm.
Yep, that makes sense. Thank you.
So we have a few new parts. I'll just explain them quickly. We had issues in hot weather where the throttle servo would get too hot. So we came up with this solution. I added this part because someone was asking about it, but we machined the throttle holder so that air can pass between the chassis and this part, and also added these carbon shims because they help to insulate this part from heat. So nitro engine heats up chassis, heat doesn't transfer as much into this part, which then heats up that bottom of the servo. So air gets to circulate there, and also the carbon shims help to insulate from the heat. And then this plastic part, we cut the tab off the outside, and also we drill holes on the inside, again, to let air circulate around the servo. And this has really helped to keep the servos cooler. And we had a couple of people in the meeting earlier today who used to have issues with servos and don't do anymore after these modifications. So it seems to be working. Then the floating steering servo. This is Pekko's idea. Maybe he can explain the thinking behind this. What was the idea here?
So this part came from actually from touring car, and this part will reduce the flex between the chassis, between the front of the chassis and the servo. So basically, without this part, normally when your chassis is flexing from the front, it will be changing the steering angle. So with this part, you don't have any of that flex. So the front end is still flexing, but the servo flexes the same time. So basically, the steering angle doesn't change. And on a track, you can feel it by when driving a long sweeping corner which has some bumps. You don't have to correct the car like almost at all. So when you are doing it without this part, you have to correct it a bit, and you are doing that basically unconsciously. So you don't probably even notice that you are doing a small adjustment with the steering. But when you change to this, you can really see the difference. And also when you are landing a jump, you have a steering right after the land. Sometimes with the normal part, you have to search for the steering, like like you have a corner right before the right after the jump. So from there also it's a bit better and also more consistent.
Yes. So I'll show how to assemble it. This is where Kevin came in. We have a new measurement, Kevin. So we have the Pekko rule for diffs, and now we have the Kevin. Don't mind this. Don't mind this over there. It's we added it in the first meeting. Okay. Anyway, so we'll add this to the wiki later, but basically the plate goes on the servo goes under the plate. Then we need the Kevin. So you measure from this plate to the underside of the servo. And on the wiki, we will explain what you do next. So you can do this with calipers, or you put the servo down on your table and measure up to this plate, whatever you want to do. But this from there to there, that is the relevant measurement. That's what we need for the next step. The next step is this. And here you see a bunch of shims. The amount of shims will depend on your Kevin here, right? This will make it easier for you, so you don't have to figure this out by trial and error and guessing how many shims you need to place here. Why is that relevant? Because you need a gap between the chassis and the servo, and all servos are different. So when you know that measurement, Wiki will tell you, okay, put 2 shims, 3 shims, 4 shims. 4 is the maximum. Is that clear? So these shims determine the height of the servo, but we can't go too low because we want the servo to be in the air and not hit the chassis and break. Okay, then next, the radio tray is different also to allow for more clearance around the servo. This is pretty straightforward. You should be able to do that. These screws are the same as for the engine mount. And then finally, you just assemble the servo and the holder to the car. Okay, clear enough, hopefully. Any comments on this?
The only thing I was gonna say is it would be nice if is the cut servo plate for the floating setup, is that gonna come with 2 of those engine mount screws?
Is that this plate, you mean?
Actually, yeah, that plate, yeah.
Yeah.
Just thermal loop. Yeah.
Yeah, it should actually, because they are not
Or
included.
actually, like
otherwise.
one of the plates should, maybe the floating servo plate or
No.
whatever, since it's already got a bag
There is
hardware.
no screw with that plate.
Yeah, we have to add. Okay. Another thing. I want to go over this because it's an issue so often. I just want to show it. Then I'm going to have to go. Let me see. Do you see that linkage now? Yes? No?
Yes.
Okay. There are a few important things to keep in mind when building the brake linkage. And if you do these, your brakes are going to work, especially now because we have new discs, new pads, better materials, they work. This part, the easy adjustment nut. there's a small black O-ring. The O-ring goes inside a groove here. Then you thread it onto this part, and the O-ring is to the inside. So the O-ring first, then it threads on. You leave a 1 mil gap here, and then you assemble. The point of this is that the O-ring stops it from moving, and then you have space either direction to adjust this. And the thing it does is it helps you to adjust brake bias. I've done it here. So I've run the car, like I built the car, then assembled it, run the car, and then on the fly in pit lane, I've just added a bit of rear brake, reduced the front. So you see how the gap's almost gone here or gone on the front, and the rear there's a bigger gap because I've adjusted the bias. Another thing, this is going to be standard also in the kits in the future. This is the grommet from the rear of the fuel tank. We use that on the rear and a O-ring on the front. That's because if your brakes fade a bit and you add more endpoint on your radio, this grommet is going to compress more than the O-ring. So that means when you add brakes, you are never going to have the situation where you start having more rear brake than front. This helps to keep the brake balance better, safer, if you need to add brakes during a run. Then for the mistakes people make and just the sort of solutions for them, these levers can't move too far. They have to move too far if you leave a big gap here, if this screw isn't all the way in. So the 4 screws holding the pads, you really need to tighten them down properly. And you can check by having everything assembled, pushing the pads together on the disc. There should just be a small 0.5 mil gap on all screws. That's one mistake people make, that there's a huge gap somewhere. That messes everything up. So make sure these screws are tight and you press the pads together on the disc, just a 0.5 mil gap. Another thing, these levers, when you put them in the, what is this called, this part? It's too late.
Cams.
Cam, yes, thank you, grazie. Who was that? The cams, the brake cams. The lever should just be flush with the underside. So it just goes through it, but not deeper than that. So the lever is as long as possible. They need to be at the same height, front and rear. And then this brake link, it's curved. There's a reason for that, because as you rotate this, the height changes, the position changes. You need to have this at a location where the levers are free to move on the link throughout the travel of the throttle servo. So at neutral, these are free. You can move them front to back. As you start opening throttle, they are free to move. And of course, yeah, when you're braking, they don't move because you are pulling on them. But these key things, really, these are the issues people have. Sometimes I've seen someone really crank down on the screws here for the plate, which has reduced the gap for the cam too much and it's a bit tight. So just back off the screw a bit, make sure the cam moves. But yeah, mainly it's not putting the O-ring in the groove, not assembling correctly, not tightening these enough. So there's just a small gap. The levers are too low or different heights. This link is rotated to the wrong angle where it's binding somewhere. So pay attention to these things and your brakes are going to be dialed. Okay? There was something else, wasn't there?
What about truggy?
Yes, that was it. It was the truggy. So we have 10 truggies with everything. So E chassis, nitro chassis, those are the options. And then all the drive shafts, hubs, gears, shock towers, turnbuckles, wide C&D block, long rear drives. What else? You have to borrow the fuel tank, borrow the lower arms. But we only have 10. Then we have enough for everyone. The parts missing are the gears and the hubs. And then you can get the gears and the hubs as soon as they're done. The reason is that they made samples first of the gears and of the hubs, and that's just enough for 10 people. So we have to figure out who built some mule trucks before. They deserve to get these, and who is going to Silver State or racing Truggy now in short term, who needs to have a Truggy now. They should be the ones who get the Truggies with the gears and with the hubs. And then as for everyone else, they still have to continue with borrowing, I think, S-Works gears or running other, like you can run the drive shafts that we make, but then you have to shim and modify and figure out the hubs because we don't have them, right? Does that make sense? So we are getting the Truggy now. They said that by the end of the month they ship. So end of next week or Monday 31st. 10 people can get everything we have. So the gears and hubs also. And then the rest can get the Truggy parts, but no gears and no hubs for now. They'll be done later.
How long is later?
You know what? It's a good question, but I would guess, my best guess would be for gears and hubs that the hubs will be done sooner. The hubs could be done by the end of April. I think gears would take longer. I would say maybe by the end of May.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I remember what it was. VRC. So, one more thing to share. So, one thing that we will be doing is playing VRC, because I do believe that it helps. We can't go to the track all the time, multiple times a week, but what we can do is pick up our radio and play VRC. And what we'll do is we'll select a time, maybe like a month or 2 months, and we all play the same track. So we select a track, then we all have the same settings for the track. You can pick the skill level of your opponents. Definitely run with collisions off, because otherwise it's mayhem. Or you can practice alone, at least to begin with, so you get a hang of it. But then once you get a hang of it, then have other cars on the track, just no collisions. We will have the same settings. The only setting that I think could be good to change for different people is the steering angle, just less steering or more steering. But everything else the same, because the thing, well, let me show you. There's a setup sheet for the car, but it doesn't really make sense. Like on VRC, sometimes you can do some very extreme setting and your car's a lot faster, and that's not really the point of this. We want to have a setup that makes it feel realistic on track, and then we all just use the same setting and try to practice consistent runs, best lap, best 8-minute time, all kinds of things like this. And to do that, we aren't controlling exactly like, are we all running the same setup? But come on, the point isn't to cheat and lie and try and figure out some way to go faster by tweaking the car. We run the same settings and then practice our driving. So we'll give you settings to run also, you know, the radio, not doing anything with any exponentials or settings. As for the game options, there are a few different settings here that help, especially if you have a computer that's a bit slower. So we'll offer all this information, and we'll start racing. We can also organize some times where we can race online together. And a thing that came up in the previous meeting was that we need to have some kind of incentives, especially for the youth, for the younger racers. So we'll have different kind of achievements and rewards. Stickers was suggested in the first meeting, and it's a really good idea where you unlock an achievement. In a sense, you get a unique sticker that we make for this purpose. And we can have other prizes. Memorabilia came up, you know, for example, Cavalieri's race body, signed race body, these kind of things that could interest people, motivate people to practice more. And this is not only for VRC, it's also for the real life practice that we're going to do at the track. And we'll talk more about that later. But for now, the point of this meeting was to show you that we have more things happening on the wiki, more information being consolidated there in one place. So making sure that everyone has all the information they need. Then also to go over the base setups, the main changes we make, and also the things that you can just keep the same. Have a plan for the next weeks and months. In Europe, the season is starting. I think in Australia, they still have a few months left of their season. We want to go to the track with a purpose, and we want to start making noticeable progress and improvement in our racing and driving. So 5-minute runs, that's the first step. Practicing on VRC, that's going to help. And then later on, we'll start dealing with setup changes and learning about setup. That's the plan right now. And over the next days and weeks, more information is going to be put in the course and also in wiki. So the coaching course, the first section there, always check back there because the meeting archives and any announcements will be there. And I also mentioned that on Discord.
Jay, what about YMP servos and engine? I saw something about it on Facebook on a post.
Yes. I will talk more about that later, but basically, just really shortly, one thing that we want to do is offer more value to everyone, all the Mayako members and people in the youth mentoring program. And one way we can do that is, for example, by this deal we made with OS and Ultimate Racing. So the Ultimate Dakota Fend edition, we are making a NPC edition or YMP edition of that. And so it's going to be a limited batch. It's the same engine, but just different logos and different color. And that's going to be available later in the summer. And then for the end of the year, we'll also make some servos. And actually now we're also making some part boxes and some bags that they'll be making. So there are a bunch of items like that that will also be released here over the next months.
And
Joseph,
Okay, cool, thanks.
Joseph, what about the new front shock tower? The wide link.
What about it?
Did you want to go over anything about it?
I haven't been able to try it yet, so I
Gotcha.
don't have much to say about that. But yeah, we have new shock towers, a front one with an insert, so you can run a shorter link. It stiffens up the front end in roll, and a rear one with higher shock holes. And the point of that one is that we can start testing with some bump stops to limit up travel, still have up travel though, but play around with that.
So far from what we've heard, everybody likes it. It's supposed to give more steering, especially with the 99 front universals. That new tower.
Yeah.
And just real quick, I sent an email about who has the mules in the US, so you know who's got what.
Okay. Good. Anything else?
You are free to go, Joseph.
I'm free to go. Woohoo! No last question? Amazing. No?
I mean, I can say something. What are your expectations for this course, Joseph? And what we can do to make your experience better? Because I know that if you are more comfortable, it will be better, I think. You know?
I think I would, for this particular thing, I would enjoy it if there are at least some people who take it seriously and make sort of tangible improvement that you can see, improvements in their racing and results.
Okay, so also sharing on social networks and those things.
Yeah, I think okay, that's a good point. So for this to really be successful longer term, people need to know about it. And the best way for people to know about it is for people in it to share their honest opinions, short video clips, screenshots, pictures, thoughts, and basically showing and explaining to people who don't know what this is and why it's good. Because if I say it, it's one thing, but if people in it really think it's worthwhile and good and they've learned something and they share that on Instagram or Facebook, I think that's way more valuable. And that's how the word will spread. And that's how this can really become something good. The more people there are here, the more resources we have, the better we can make it. So, yeah.
Okay. Now we are free to go, Joseph. You can...
Now, good. Thank you. 5 hours of meetings today. The archive of the first one will be good. So even though you were in this one, go check that one out too.
Okay.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Bye, guys. Ciao, ciao.
See ya. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Jay.
Hi, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.
So